This is so you can hang it over a fire, small enough, light enough. Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Today, I want to talk to you about the hobo roll. Stay tuned. Before we get started in this video, I'd like to give a tribute to Hobo Shoestring. We just found out last week that he had passed from this mortal existence, and he's caught that last westbound train. He had been missing since the last part of March 2024, and there was a very large manhunt going on to see what happened to him, and unfortunately it was found that he had deceased. He will be greatly missed by his family, his friends, and his many, many viewers on YouTube who found his work to be refreshing and honest. He was a kind and gentle soul. We send out prayers and best wishes to his family. Rest in peace, Hobo Shoestring. In our ongoing series of what hobos in the classic era, the 1930s, might have carried on their body for trekking and camping and traveling from place to place, today we have the hobo roll. It's also known as a horseshoe pack, and there were different ways to put it together. And you could put it into a square configuration, strap it onto your back and carry it more like a backpack. It was also known as a hobo balloon, just different names that they used. You'll also notice that we're carrying a haversack, or as it was known in the day, a musette bag. And we'll get into this on another video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But today, we're going to talk about this hobo roll and how you would have used it to camp as you traveled, how to pack it properly. So let's get into that right now. This is the hobo roll, or also known as a horseshoe pack. Now, we are on a siding of the railroad here. There's some cars parked just that direction, and there is a switch behind me. So we're in a safe spot to show you this. But this is something that would be carried by a lot of people back in the day. These blanket type rolls go way, way back, hundreds of years, and they were very useful. Now, a hobo that carried his own sleeping gear was also sometimes known as a blanket stiff. Just one of the nicknames that they gathered over the years. Now, you can use any kind of cord that you want, but here we've just got our 1/2-inch rope, and that works really, really well and holds everything together. Very, very simple. We don't have a lot of complex knots holding it together, just some half hitches. And I'll go ahead and take this apart, and then I'll show you how to tie it up at the end when we put it all back together. All right, so we've got that untied, and here's another look at the haversack or musette that we are carrying. And remember to stay tuned to the next video, and we'll show you what we're carrying in here. I think you'll enjoy that one. So we're just going to unroll this, open it up, and you can see we've got several items in here. The first item that you'll notice is we have this black rubber ground sheet. Now, this was used from the time that Goodyear invented the vulcanization process, and it was found that you could put rubber on one side of a sheet of some type of cloth. There were different types of cloths used. Muslin was very popular, and you want to carry it with the rubber side to the inside because it's too slippery to tie up the other way. The next item that you see, next layer, is the wool blanket. Very important. And this is a half shelter. This would be a military half shelter. Again, these were used for many, many decades, and a hobo in the 1930s would have had access to plenty of old military gear, and many of them were veterans, so they were already used to using these types of objects. Once we get it unrolled, you can see how we have the items lined out. Now, you want to keep your hard items on either side. and the softer items in the center where it goes over top of your shoulder for comfort. The first item we're going to look at is this wonderful cook kit. Now this was given out by Sharps the Clothier. It was a store in Illinois. The way it's designed, it's got these hooks that go over top of these loops. Makes it easy to carry, and of course you can fold this down either way for flat carry. When it's folded down, you can work these loops off. It only works from one direction, so if it's folded the other way you can't take the lid off. But this is the main lid, and this dates back to the mid-1880s. As you see inside, we have several stackable tins. This, of course, being the largest tin, and the lid fits on top of this, not only for carry and storage, but also for your largest cooking vessel. Then we have a succession of two more tins. We have a large, a medium, and a small tin. And then in the very center, you have these. This is so you can hang it over a fire. This is a sealed container. This lid does not come off. It is soldered on. And this is the lid, which is also your cup. So if you want to warm up your beans or you just boil water, you put it in there, put your lid on, suspend it. You could use a string over a fire, and this becomes your cooking vessel. And then of course you can hold it with something. You would want to make sure that you had a pair of gloves, or of course you should always carry your handkerchief. But you would take this out and then you could pour into your cup. A lot of the cups back in the day were much smaller than what we carry now, and so they were pretty happy with that. They would just fill it back up if they needed more. Also remember, people were smaller back in those days. Packing it all up is quite easy. You simply re-nest all of the tins in their proper order. Fold those ears down. Goes into the large tin. Everything flattens down really nice. The lid goes back on. Fasten that on the lip. And then you put the little ears over top, just like that. And you're ready to go again. Very compact. This was well thought out. The next item that we have is a small burlap bag, and in it we have a couple of potatoes. Of course, they were very commonly used back in those days. Fairly easy to keep, did not require refrigeration, and something that could easily be cut up and put into any kind of stew, into the hobo pot for making the mulligan. So that was a very important component. The next item, in a small ditty bag. And of course you would carry extra of these if you had them for carrying more food, but we just simply have a little bit of soap. Packed neatly in the center are our soft items that I referred to earlier. We have just a pair of work gloves, very, very important. These are also somewhat insulated, so these would be great for sleeping at night, keeping your hands warm. Boxcars were very cold, as well as many of the camps. We also have an extra pair of skivvies, so underwear to most folks. Extra pair of wool socks. Next we have a piece of cotton cloth. This would be used for cleanup or anything that you might need to do. This one's a little soiled and stained, but you would use this in addition to your handkerchief, which you would always carry in a pocket, of course. A knit cap would be of the utmost importance to keep the head warm at night, as well as for riding on freight cars, and if you didn't find a good spot or you had to ride out exposed. And then an extra shirt. Try to keep this extra shirt clean, because if you needed to go in for a job interview or into town, sometimes what you'd be wearing would be a little soiled, so you'd want to keep that definitely clean. Next item, keeping all of our heavy items down to each end, of course, would be another sack, ditty bag, and in here you would carry your canned food. So this would be a hobo's backup meal. Canned food was very popular, of course invented in the early 1800s, and you would carry this for the mulligan, and with some potatoes and maybe some meat that you could get somewhere, you could have a pretty good meal. The last item that you see is a small but sturdy camp hatchet or camp axe. This would be used to process camp firewood, small enough, light enough, and with a good wedge, perfect for splitting. Once all of those items are removed, we can see our folded shelter half right here. So go ahead and move it out of the way. Here is the wool blanket, obviously very important to keep you warm. And then finally, we have our rubber sheet, our rubber ground mat. This is to keep, of course, all the moisture off of us. And as I explained, you want to put the cloth on the outside. That way it would tie up better, it wouldn't slip as much, and you would be able to preserve this a little bit better as well if you're running through brush or something like that. But this is a unique ground sheet. This goes way back, as I said, and this one is also designed to be used as a poncho. It has an opening right here in the very center for the head and neck to go through. Notice that it is grommeted, so this can also be set up as an additional shelter, but of course we have our canvas shelter half for that. But this makes this very useful. So this is what it looks like when it's on. It's pretty wide, it has pretty decent coverage, front and back. And of course, you could just roll up your things in the blanket, again a horseshoe roll, and you could put this on over top of all of your gear. It would keep it dry if you had to walk. A lot of hobos had to walk on the railroad tracks. It's called walking the cinders, and it was you know, it was a rough way to go. It's hard on your shoes, but remember that trains don't always come when you want them to, and you have to walk to and from jobs, and it was just part of the life that they lived. This could also be worn as an extra layer to help insulate you from the cold, and because it is black on the outside, it will absorb heat, so that's also very beneficial. And if you needed to store your gear and stash it away somewhere in the woods, being a very dark black color, be easy to cover your pack and everything, put a few leaves and branches and some greenery over top of it, and would very well camouflage your gear while you were away working if you were afraid that someone might come and rifle through your stuff. And for those of you who know a little bit more about history, yes, this rubber ground sheet poncho was known as a gum blanket. To put it all back together, you first lay out your rubber ground sheet, your gum blanket, lay it out flat, and then the next item that goes on is your wool blanket. Now the wool blanket might be a little bit bigger, and so you'll need to fold some of the ends in just to keep it inside the whole rectangle, because you don't want it getting wet if this is on the outside and a sudden rainstorm comes up. Next we put in our canvas shelter half, and again you want everything to be kind of opened up but fitting within the footprint, just as we're doing here, with room left on the outside. Now we get all of our gear arranged as we had it before, trying to stick to the same basic pattern that we had when we were packing the first time, and now we're ready to roll it up. You can do this from either side because our gear is in the middle, but what you want to do is you want to start rolling this, and you want to try to get it as tight as you can. So we're just going to roll like this. Try to keep these ends in. You'll have to adjust them a little bit. Now you can put your knee and roll the sides separately like this. That works pretty good. And then when we get over top, we're just going to continue to work this carefully, bit by bit, keeping everything together. Again, use the knees in like this. Alright, that looks pretty good. And now, before we finish, we want to fold this flap over so that this isn't just loose and in the breeze. So we can back this off just a little bit and take this and fold it under, just like so. And then we continue to roll it until we've got a nice, decent pack, just like that. What we've got here is a 24-foot piece of 1/2-inch heavy-duty rope. Of course, this can be used for a hammock as well, as I've showed you in a previous video. Encourage you to check that out. But on this end, all we have is a simple slip knot with a stop knot, so that it can't go any farther. And we go down here to the end where it's just past our gear, and we put the slip knot over top of it, just like this, and pull it tight. And that's how you begin to seal up your pack. Now, to tie this along the length, we just do half hitches. For those of you who know how to do ropes, this isn't a big deal, but I'm going to try to show you here. So we come down across the top, I'm going to come around underneath the bottom, and then we're simply just going to go around it like this, and then loop it and pull it through. Just like that, and cinch it down tight. Make sure we get all the slack out here. And you'll do that all the way down until we get down to the end, and I'll show you how to tie that off. Now, I've spaced these about a foot apart, and you want to try to keep it so that you don't have a knot or a rope in the middle where it's going over top of your shoulder, because that's going to really rub and make it uncomfortable. But when we finally get to the other end, we want to make sure that everything is rolled and gathered, and just like we did the first end, we're going to pinch it tight like this, and then we're going to go over top. We do another half hitch just like this, and then another one on top of that to lock that in. And again, we've just made a really nice heavy-duty knot. We'll pull that tight so it can't come loose. Really, really super simple. And everything is held inside. Now that we've got our horseshoe pack tied back up and rolled neatly, and again, tight, but not so tight that it loses that puffiness. You really do want the cushioning. We're going to make sure that this rope stays in the middle, right here, and on the top side, so at the top of the horseshoe bend. So we're going to roll this rope just like this, and we're going to bend it around like this. Now, depending on the size of your gum blanket or the size of your bedroll, your hobo roll, whatever you're doing, you may need to do what I do. I'm pretty broad-shouldered, and so I have to leave a space. Now, a lot of the hobo packs or hobo rolls, if you're a small person, you can actually tie them together at the end just like this, and that makes a really tight, compact roll. However, because I'm pretty deep-chested, I can't carry it like that. So I have to leave, maybe a couple of feet in the center, just like this. And again, I just come over the top and I fasten it with a couple of just simple half hitches. You can use any kind of knot that you want, but something that's quick and easy and won't come loose. And that's what that looks like when it's all tied together, and that will hold. When you get ready to hit the road and travel, we simply put on our haversack or musette bag on one side, whichever you prefer, it doesn't really matter. And then the horseshoe roll or hobo roll. Over top the shoulder, nice and soft. The rope, of course, not in the way, just like this, and we're ready to go. And what's useful about this is that if you get tired of carrying it on one shoulder, you can just put it on the other. This is James Bender for Waypoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. And while you're down there, you'll also find our waypointsurvival.com link. And this is where you can sign up to take survival and bushcraft classes at our beautiful training facility in Southern Ohio. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.